theme centered around addressing white dominance with integrity. Uh, a white person asked, "How do I help shift white people when the organization is actually part of the problem and is something that they can't see?" Or I get frustrated with the resistance of white people in terms of doing this work. And another question that came up was around, how do I manage up? How do I work with white women in organizations that in white-led organizations, white women-led organizations, um, and how do I take care of myself even in a sea of fear? How do I navigate managing upwards even with fear? So just to say a little bit about this, and we could think about, and what I want you to think about even as I'm speaking, as you think about your own situation, so many things that are these questions I'm sure we can all relate to on some level, because it's in the soup of doing this work, which is always very challenging. But think about context. You're always in some kind of context. You're always entering into the middle of some kind of mess, usually. And so assessing your context, right? Situating yourself, planting yourself firmly in your seat within the context that you're in is really important. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is that you are sensing the room. It's a little different than working the room, but you're sensing the room and what's there and some of the nuances that are at play, whether it's the room, the organization, the relationship that or the coaching that you might be in. So you're always in a context, and we usually bring with us a certain view about what we're in the middle of or what we're walking into, both what we're sensing and how we sense we are being perceived in those situations. What I want to say about navigating white dominant spaces, being able to navigate white dominant spaces. I know I got from a lot of the inquiries, people know a lot about doing this already. And especially in terms of influencing the space, a lot has to do with intention, early on intention, or if you will, contracting before you even get into the space. What are you there to do? Where are you starting? There were a few comments in the inquiries that said, I like to go in and meet people where they are. Well, I want you to meet them where they are, but I want you to do a little more than that. I want you to also, what I find with this work is that it's crucial to educate people to some degree so that there's some basis of movement where we're joining. So I find myself often sharing a principle or doing an assessment. You're all in different places, or starting with some kind of teaching where we all understand, like I talk about dominance and subordination, individual and group dynamics, dominant and subordinated racial characteristics. This is where I'm coming from, y'all. So when we then start addressing the issue, we have some place where we're talking about it, especially if you're working with groups. If you go into a group and you're just going to meet everybody where they are, that can be a real challenge unless you've done an assessment with everybody that's coming into the space. So one way, if you're going into a space and you don't know where everybody is coming from, then you educate them and bring them to a point of engagement where we're all talking at least a similar language on how we're understanding. And as the consultant or as the influencer, you get to kind of present that frame, if you will, as a beginning place, as a gateway. And then you can reference back to that. So when we relate this to how do I navigate white spaces, you can meet them where they are. Where are they? And then what principle do you want to drop into the equation that supports them in um, being able to make sense out of their own situation, right? You've given them a tool to be able to look at it in a particular way, and then you can talk about whether that makes sense to them or what's getting in the way. You have to start with some base of education and agreement from folks to take them to a higher place of awareness. Now, agreement doesn't have to mean it's signed. It could be that question when you're working with people. I want to talk to you about how you are, some data I have about how you're influencing other people. Or there's something I noticed that you did that had an impact on me. I want to talk about you. Are you willing to listen? That's the consent piece. Are you willing to listen? Are you willing to hear me talk to you guys about race, right? Are you willing to go there? Are you willing to hear something that might anchor us in one place so that we can move together on this issue? So the art of dropping in a question, getting consent, providing a little bit of education so that there is a base for people to operate in. Otherwise, I know for myself, I can get very ungrounded. And you might have noticed just in the design of this course, it's kind of like submit your questions, let me get a feel for who you are, tell me a little bit about yourself so that I understand your situation, so that I can speak to that. That's a form of consent, as well as understanding how you're entering so that I can do the best that I can to speak to your issues.